I'm Karen Climer. I own and operate Demetree School of Real Estate in Orlando, Florida. In this video, I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get your Florida Real Estate Sales Associate license. First, let's be sure you qualify for licensure. In order to qualify for a Florida real estate license, you need to be 18 years old or older, have a high school diploma or equivalent, such as a GED or a high school diploma from another country. You do not need to have a physical copy of your high school diploma. So if it's in your parents' attic, that's fine, but you have to attest that you have one. If you're ever audited or they had reason to believe that you were not being honest, you might have to actually prove you have one. Third, you have to have a social security number. You do not have to be a Florida resident or a U.S. citizen, but you do have to have a U.S. social security number. Fourth, you have to be honest, truthful, trustworthy, and of good character. In other words, you can't have too much of a criminal history. If you had one or two minor situations from a long time ago, you should be fine. But if you have something significant, particularly something related to dishonesty, you might not be able to get a Florida real estate license. We'll talk more about that later in the video. And lastly, you have to be competent enough to handle real estate transactions, so you can't be mentally incompetent. Occasionally, I'm asked if you can take the class before you meet these qualifications. For example, can a 17-year-old take the class? Or if you're working on getting your social security number but don't have it yet, can you go ahead and start the class? Yes, anyone can take the class, but your certificate for class is valid for 2 years. So if you took the class when you're 17 and then you got your license when you were 18, that would work. If you took the class when you were 14, your certificate would expire before you had a chance to get your license. Once we're certain that you qualify for licensure, there are 3 steps to getting the license. You'll need to take a pre-licensing class from a licensed real estate school, apply for your license with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, and pass the Florida real estate exam. Once you finish all 3 steps, you have a real estate license. So let's go through each step in detail. Step 1 is to take a real estate class from a licensed real estate school. I recommend Demetree School of Real Estate in Orlando, which I own and operate. The pre-licensing class is a 60-hour class with a 3-hour end-of-class exam. Once you pass that class, you'll have a certificate that allows you to take the state exam. This class is offered in person or as an online self-study class. There are pros and cons to each method, but either one gets you the same certificate. Step 2 is to apply to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, or the DBPR, for a real estate license. You'll want to go to www.myfloridalicense.com to apply for your license. The application is pretty straightforward, but there are a few things I want to draw your attention to. The name and address that's on your government photo ID, such as your driver's license or passport, needs to be the same name and address that you put on your application, and the same name and address that you use to register for real estate school. So if your driver's license says your last name is Smith-Brown, you can't use Smith or Brown on your real estate license. You must use Smith-Brown. Or if you moved and haven't updated the address on your driver's license, you need to get that corrected. All of your names and addresses need to match. Also, there are 4 questions on the application about your background. Read these questions very carefully before you answer them. One of them asks about your criminal history. If you have ever, at any point in your life, been convicted or pled no contest to a misdemeanor or felony, you need to disclose it. Even if adjudication was withheld, even if it didn't happen in Florida, even if you were a juvenile, even if it was so long ago you forgot about it, you have to disclose it. Now let me explain why I stress this so much. Let's say you have some sort of young and dumb type of charge from decades ago. Maybe something like possession of marijuana, shoplifting, driving while license suspended. A lot of people made mistakes as teens or young adults, so that's probably not going to prevent you from getting a license. But if today, when you complete the application, you say you don't have any criminal history, then your background check shows that you do, Now you have to explain why you lied on your application. Now it's gone from a stupid decision 20 years ago to a dishonest decision today. In other words, now the criminal history isn't the problem. The dishonesty on your application is the problem. And there really isn't any acceptable excuse for that. So read these questions very carefully before you answer them. And keep in mind that it's a third-degree felony to lie on the application. If you have a criminal history, you have to list each incident. You also have to include the arrest record and the final disposition for each incident. So you might have to contact the court system in the county where the event occurred to get that information. As part of the application, you'll need to get your fingerprints done from a live scan vendor. The DBPR prefers that you do this a few days before you submit the online application. That way, they'll have the fingerprints when they receive your application. You must use a live scan vendor. Some local police departments are authorized to do this, many are not. Be sure it's a live scan vendor. There's a list of authorized vendors on the DBPR website. When you contact the live scan vendor, they will ask you what the ORI number is. This is the number that allows them to send the fingerprints to the correct state agency. The ORI number for sales associates and brokers is FL, as in Florida license, 920010Z, as in zebra. Everybody has to do the background check and fingerprints. Even if you're a police officer, a nurse, a teacher, or some other profession that has background checks done. Even if you just had one done last week for some other license. Everyone has to do a background check for this license. If you have no criminal history or a minor one, they'll approve your application without any additional information. If you have a more significant criminal history, they might ask you for more information, recommendation letters, or invite you to explain your case to the Florida Real Estate Commission. Then the Florida Real Estate Commission, or FREC, will discuss it and vote on your application individually. Once you're approved, you'll get an email from Pearson VUE, which is the private testing vendor, telling you that you're eligible to take the state exam. Then you can contact Pearson VUE and schedule your exam. It is your responsibility to schedule the exam. The state does not schedule it for you. And scheduling it is much like scheduling a doctor's appointment. Sometimes you can get an appointment in a few days, other times it takes several months. For most people, it doesn't matter if you go to school or apply to the DBPR first. Most people do them simultaneously. However, if you have a criminal history, to the extent that you aren't sure if your license will be approved, I would recommend that you apply for your license first and get approved before attending school. That way, if you're denied, you won't have spent the money on class tuition. If you don't have a criminal history, or if it's pretty old or minor, you can register for school before you apply for the license. In fact, at Demetree School of Real Estate, we help people fill out their applications and get their fingerprints done in class. You definitely want to complete the state application before you finish your class. Don't wait until you finish school. Why is that? You can't take the state exam until the state has approved your application. Depending on the number of applications they have at any given time, it can take up to 90 days. You don't want to get in a situation where you finish the class, you're ready to take the state exam, you just have to wait for state approval. So go ahead and submit your application when you begin class or even before. If you submit your application and you've not heard anything for a few weeks, first check your spam folder. They may have contacted you and it went to spam. If not, contact the DBPR and ask them, do you have my application? Do you have my fingerprints? Are they connected to each other? Sometimes they have both of them, but just for whatever reason they didn't get connected to each other. So ask if they're connected. Lastly, ask if there's anything else you need from me. If you're missing something, they refer to it as a deficiency. If you have a deficiency such as you didn't include your arrest report from that charge in 2010, they'll contact you once to tell you that, but they won't chase you down. They'll send you an email. If you miss that email, your application will just sit in limbo. So ask, is there anything else you need from me? Once you're approved, or what the state calls exam eligible, you'll receive an email from Pearson VUE. In that email is something called the RE App ID. It's a random number that's assigned to you. you need that number to schedule the state exam. You can call Pearson VUE or go to www.pearsonvue.com to schedule your exam. Once you pass your exam, you just need to find a broker to start working. Feel free to call me if you're looking for a good broker. Also, feel free to call me if you have any questions about getting a license, finding a good school, or passing the Florida real estate exam. If you found this video helpful, please like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment below right now. If you have any additional questions about getting started in real estate, you're welcome to call me.